Welcome to Everyday English with Annie. Today, for our English listening practice deep dive, we are unpacking some excerpts from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money. And we're really trying to answer this one, fundamental question, right? Can saving money actually make you rich?
Yeah, it's a huge question. And
Yeah.
to answer it, I think we have to start by looking at this really wild paradox right at the center of the sources today.
Right, absolutely. So imagine two entirely different lives for a second. On one hand, you have a man named Ronald Reed. And he was born in rural Vermont, first person in his entire family to even graduate high school.
Very unassuming blue-collar kind of life.
Exactly that. I mean, he drove used cars. His main hobby was literally just chopping firewood. And he spent 25 years fixing cars at a gas station. And then he spent another 17 years just quietly sweeping floors as a janitor at a local J.C. Penney.
Right, so a totally modest existence.
Yeah. But then that you contrast him with this other man, Richard Fuscone. And he was basically everything Ronald Reed was not. Like Harvard educated, he had an MBA, and he was this incredibly successful executive at Merrill Lynch.
Oh yeah, he was a massive deal in finance. I mean, the text mentions he was even included in one of those prominent under 40 lists of top business people.
Yeah, he actually retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. And he borrowed super heavily to expand this massive 18,000 square foot mansion in Connecticut. It had like 2 elevators, 2 pools, 7 garages. It cost more than $90,000 a month just to maintain the place.
So we are talking about two absolute opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to pedigree, education, and obviously income.
Completely. But the reason we are looking at these two men today is the staggering outcome of their lives. So when Ronald Reed, the humble janitor, died at age 92 back in 2014, he left behind an estate worth $8 million.
Which is it's incredible.
It's mind-blowing. He left $2 million to his stepkids and $6 million to his local hospital and library. And there was no secret lottery win. There was no hidden inheritance. It was just patient saving and investing. But meanwhile...
Yeah, here is the crazy part.
Right. Just months before Reed's death, Richard Fuscone, the Harvard-educated finance executive, literally stood before a bankruptcy judge. The 2008 financial crisis had totally destroyed his portfolio. His homes were foreclosed, and he was completely wiped out.
It is a remarkable contrast, and honestly, it perfectly establishes the overarching theme of the text we're looking at today. Financial success is not a hard science. It's just not something you can reliably measure by intelligence or IQ or formal education. It is fundamentally a soft skill. It is driven almost entirely by human behavior and psychology.
Wait, but that defies the logic of almost every other profession. Like, a janitor couldn't just step into an operating room and perform a better heart transplant than a Harvard-trained surgeon, right?
Yeah.
Or design a safer skyscraper than an architect.
No, of course not. It totally defies conventional logic. In almost any other technical field, your formal training dictates your outcome. But in the world of money, how you behave matters significantly more than what you technically know.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how a janitor beat a Wall Street executive, we have to recognize that they were playing two completely different games. We constantly confuse the word rich with the word wealthy, but the source material makes a really sharp distinction between those two.
They're entirely different concepts. Rich is basically a measure of current income. Like if you see someone driving a $100,000 car, they are rich. That car proves they have current income or, at least enough debt capacity to afford the monthly payment. It's an outward display of cash flow.
Yeah, and the text provides this really illuminating analogy about diet and exercise to explain that difference. Like, you can go to the gym and endure the physical pain of running on a treadmill for an hour, but the actual weight loss doesn't happen in the gym.
Right, it happens in the kitchen.
Exactly. It happens when you go home and you actively choose not to eat that massive piece of chocolate cake. The weight loss is the physical equivalent of those unconsumed calories. It requires an immense amount of just continuous self-control. And wealth is the exact financial equivalent. It is the luxury car you didn't buy, the diamond watch you didn't purchase, the first-class flight upgrade you declined. Wealth is an accumulation of unspent choices.
Which is precisely why it is so profoundly difficult for people to grasp, and why it's so hard to find wealthy role models. Because wealth is hidden. We are visually wired creatures. We assess our surroundings based on what we can see, but you cannot see someone's brokerage account.
No, you can't.
You cannot look at someone walking down the street and see their mutual funds or their retirement savings. So we end up judging financial success by outward appearances, the cars, the homes, the designer clothes. We see the richness, but we are completely blind to the wealth.
There is a detail in the text about the singer Rihanna that highlights this perfectly. She nearly went bankrupt at one point, and she actually sued her financial advisor over it.
Yeah. And her advisor basically asked the court, he said, was it really necessary to explain to her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money?
I mean, it sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but people say all the time, I want to be a millionaire, when what they actually mean is, I want to spend $1 million, which is the literal mathematical opposite of being a millionaire.
Exactly.
The only way to build wealth is to not spend the money that you have. And so I'll ask you directly as you're listening to this, how often do you judge someone's success by what they are driving or wearing instead of considering the invisible assets they might be quietly building in the background?
It's a really natural human trap.
Yeah.
But if wealth is fundamentally unspent money, then the active verb of wealth has to be saving. And saving isn't just a math problem on a spreadsheet. It is entirely a psychology problem. If we connect this to the bigger picture, building wealth relies incredibly heavily on a concept we usually apply to machines. Efficiency?
Like energy efficiency.
Exactly. Think back to the 1970s oil crisis. During the 70s, the global economy was expanding rapidly, and we were consuming massive amounts of oil. And the mathematical calculation at the time was that we were simply going to run out. The existing reserves just couldn't sustain the growth.
All right, everyone panicked.
But the world didn't end. And we didn't survive that crisis because we suddenly found massive new underground oceans of oil. We survived because we fundamentally changed how we consumed energy. Our technology became vastly more efficient. Engineers designed cars that got twice the gas mileage. Factories figured out how to produce the same goods using half the electricity.
Wow, so we essentially solved an energy shortage just by doing more with less.
Right. And saving money is exactly that. It is personal financial efficiency. You cannot control what the stock market does this year, and you cannot dictate the inflation rate or the broader economy, but you have 100% control over your own frugality.
But hold on. That goes against almost every piece of financial advice we're taught growing up. Like, we're told to save for a specific target, a down payment on a house, a new car, or a vacation. If wealth is just unspent money, aren't we just hoarding cash for no specific reason? Like, why should we save just for the sake of saving?
Well, because past a certain baseline level of income, once your core survival needs and basic comforts are met, spending is mostly just your ego approaching your income.
Okay, wait, what does that mean?
It means it's spending money just to signal to other people that you have money. Therefore, raising your savings rate doesn't necessarily require raising your income. It requires raising your humility. It is a daily psychological struggle against the instinct to show off.
Oh, wow. So saving is essentially the physical gap between your ego and your income.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. And when you save without a specific spending goal, like a car or a house, you are actually buying the ultimate hidden return. You are buying flexibility.
Oh,
Saving for a specific goal assumes that you know exactly what your future will look like. It assumes the world is predictable. And, it isn't. Let's say your industry suddenly changes or a global pandemic hits. If you only save for a car, you have car money. But if you save just for the sake of saving, you have the financial runway to quit a toxic job, switch careers, or wait out a bad economy without being forced to take the first terrible offer out of desperation. The less you need to spend to show off your ego, the more flexibility you can afford.
here's where it gets really interesting. Because once you've checked your ego and you've started saving with that efficiency, you have to give that money the one thing it needs to actually grow: time. The math in the source text regarding compounding is staggering. Let's look at Warren Buffett. At the time this text was written, his net worth was about $84.5 billion. But $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
The vast majority of his wealth was generated when he was at retirement age. It's crazy.
Wow. Yes. We spend so much time analyzing his investing skills, reading thousands of books about his corporate strategies. But his true secret weapon is simply time. He started investing seriously when he was 10 years old.
Right.
If he had started at age 30 and retired at age 60, like a normal person, his net worth wouldn't be $84 billion. The text calculates it would have been about $11.9 million. That is 99.9% less than his actual net worth.
What's fascinating here is how that mathematical reality compares to the careers of other legendary investors. Take Jim Simons, for example, a famous hedge fund manager. Simons actually has vastly superior annual returns, around 66% annually compared to Buffett's roughly 22%. Literally no one even comes close to Simon's investing record.
Wow. Okay.
But Siamese is worth about 75% less than Buffett. Why? Simply because Simons didn't find his investing stride until he was 50 years old.
So he had less than half the time to let his money compound. But how exactly does that mechanism create such a massive gap?
Well, people tend to think of interest as a flat rate. Like, if you have $100 and get 10%, you get $10. The next year, you get another $10. But compounding is when that new $10 starts earning its own 10%. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it just gathers a few flakes. But after 30 or 40 years of continuous rolling, the snowball is so massive that a single revolution adds more snow than the entire first 10 years combined. That's why the heavy lifting of wealth creation happens at the very end of the timeline.
So getting the highest possible returns isn't actually the secret. It's about not getting interrupted.
Exactly, because getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two distinct skills. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being optimistic, putting capital on the line. But staying wealthy, that requires almost the exact opposite mentality. It requires a healthy dose of paranoia. It requires intense frugality and a focus on survival. Look at the story of Jesse Livermore. He was a genius stock trader. During the catastrophic 1929 stock market crash, while most people were losing everything, Livermore made an absolute fortune because he had bet that the market would go down.
So he really understood how to get wealthy.
He did. He returned home to a family that thought they were ruined, only to tell them they were richer than ever. But he didn't possess the skill of staying wealthy. He continued to take massive, highly leveraged risks, eventually lost all of that wealth, and tragically ended up taking his own life.
Oh, that's awful. And the sources also bring up Warren Buffett's lesser-known third partner, Rick Guerin. Most people know Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger as this famous investing duo, but Rick Guerin was right there with them making investments in the early days. Charlie Munger even said Rick was just as smart and just as skilled at identifying great investments as they were. But he didn't survive the game. Let's explain what buying on margin actually means, because that was his downfall. Buying on margin is when you buy stocks using a loan from your brokerage firm. You use your existing investments as collateral to borrow money so you can buy even more stock, hoping to multiply your gains.
Right.
But there's a dangerous catch. If the stock market drops and the value of your investments falls too low, the broker panics. They issue a margin call. They demand you deposit more cash immediately to cover the loan. And if you don't have the cash, the broker is legally allowed to forcefully sell off your stocks at the absolute bottom of the market just to pay themselves back. You are wiped out, permanently locking in those massive losses. And during a massive market downturn in the 1970s, the stock market dropped almost 70%. Buffett and Munger had the survival mindset. They didn't use debt, so they just patiently rode out the storm. But Rick Guerin had used leverage. He got margin calls. He was forced to sell his stock to Warren just to cover his debts.
It makes me think of structural engineering.
Oh, how so?
It's like building a bridge over a massive river. If structural engineers know a bridge will have to support 10,000 pounds of daily commuter traffic, they don't design it to hold exactly 10,000 pounds. They design it to hold 30,000 pounds.
Right, of course.
That extra capacity isn't a waste of steel or a failure of efficiency. It's the margin of error. It is what keeps the bridge standing when an unexpected earthquake hits. Guerin built his financial bridge to hold exactly the weight he expected on a sunny day. When the financial earthquake of the 1970s hit, his bridge collapsed. That is the perfect way to look at a margin of safety. You have to build room for error into your financial life. You have to structure your savings and your lifestyle so that you can survive the worst days in the market. If your bridge collapses on a bad day because you took too much risk, you aren't around for the magical decades of compounding that follow.
Surviving those market panics, those terrible days, requires a fundamental mental shift in how we view the stock market going down. The text provides a fantastic analogy about buying a car. Let's say you want a new car. You basically have three options. One, you can step up and pay the full sticker price for a nice new car. Two, you can buy a cheaper used car that maybe isn't as nice and doesn't have the same features. Or three, you can try to steal it.
Obviously, most people don't choose the third option because of the legal and moral consequences.
But in investing, people attempt the third option all the time. People who try to time the market, pulling their money out before they think a crash is coming and trying to jump back in right before a boom, are acting like well-meaning car thieves. They want the massive reward of compounding, the equivalent of the nice new car, but they are trying to steal it by avoiding the price.
Right, and everything has a price, but not all prices appear on labels. The price of investing success is not cash. It is volatility, fear, uncertainty, and regret. We have to shift our mindset to view market volatility as a fee rather than a fine.
Let's dig into that difference between a fee and a fine because it completely changes how you react to losing money.
Yeah, when you get a parking fine or a speeding ticket, it means you broke a rule, you did something wrong, you were being punished by the system, and your natural human response is to change your behavior to avoid being punished again. Fines mean you made a mistake. So when investors treat a 20% market drop as a fine, they panic. They sell all their investments to avoid further punishment.
But market drops aren't fines.
No, they are a fee. If you want to go to an amusement park, you have to pay $100 at the gate. You willingly pay the cost of admission because you know the experience is worth it. Think about why stocks return more than cash in a savings account over a 30-year period. That extra return is a risk premium. It is the literal compensation the market pays you for being willing to endure the psychological pain of seeing your portfolio drop during a recession.
Okay, I see.
The volatility is the mechanism that creates the reward. The ups and downs of the market, that is just the fee. It is the price of admission for long-term growth. Once you accept it as a fee, you stop feeling like you are being punished, you stop trying to dodge the toll like a car thief, and you just pay the fee and stay on the ride.
But all of this surviving, all of this enduring market drops, it doesn't really matter if you don't know when your personal game ends. You have to define what you are actually trying to achieve with your savings.
Which brings us to the profound danger of never enough. The sources detail the tragic stories of people like Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff. Rajat Gupta's story is particularly striking. He went from being an orphan in the slums of Kolkata to becoming the CEO of McKinsey, the world's most prestigious consulting firm.
Wow.
He was worth a reported $100 million. He partnered with Bill Gates on philanthropy and sat on the boards of some of the biggest companies in the world. He had unimaginable wealth and prestige.
And yet he engaged in illegal insider trading during the 2008 financial crisis to try and make even more money, and he went to federal prison for it. Like, why would someone with $100 million risk their freedom for a little bit more?
Because the goalpost kept moving. Warren Buffett summarized people like Gupta and Madoff perfectly. He said, to make money they didn't have and didn't need, they risked what they did have and did need. It proves that the absolute hardest financial skill to master is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If your expectations rise equally with your results, there is no logic in striving for more, because you will perpetually be chasing a moving target.
So what does this all mean for your daily life when you're actually deciding what to do with your paycheck? Well, I love this deeply personal confession from the author of our source text, Morgan Housel, at the very end of the excerpts. He reveals that his family's ultimate financial goal isn't to beat the market or to buy luxury cars or massive mansions. Their ultimate goal is simply independence.
It brings us full circle to the idea of wealth being unseen.
Yeah. He writes that he and his wife basically locked in their lifestyle expectations in their 20s. As their income grew over the years, they just kept living at that exact same level. Every dollar of every raise just went into their independence fund. Not to buy a boat, but because the highest dividend that money pays is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That is their definition of enough.
It's a remarkably freeing way to look at money. It removes the pressure of having to be an investing genius. And it shifts the focus entirely to what you can control, your desires, your ego, and your savings rate.
Let's take a breath and recap the incredible journey we've been on today. We started by realizing that true wealth is what you don't see. It's the unspent money, the unconsumed calories, the invisible assets giving you options. We learned that saving is really just the physical gap between your ego and your income, a form of personal efficiency. We saw through the story of Rick Guerin that the true magic of compounding only works if you build a bridge with a margin of safety. You have to survive the volatility, and that requires viewing market drops as a fee, not a fine. And ultimately, the end goal of all of this isn't to buy more stuff, it's to define your own game, stop the goalpost from moving, and buy back your own time.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering idea from the text to mull over. It's a concept called the end of history illusion.
The end of history illusion, that sounds like a sci-fi concept.
It kind of does. It's a proven psychological quirk where people drastically underestimate how much their personalities, their desires, and their goals will change in the future. We all look back 10 years and say, wow, I was so different back then, I can't believe what I used to care about. But when we look forward to the future, we confidently assume we will be exactly the same person we are today. We think our personal history has ended, and we are the finished product.
Oh, like telling a 5-year-old he should be a lawyer and he fights you because he is absolutely certain he wants to be a tractor driver.
Exactly.
Mm.
We laugh at the 5-year-old, but adults do the exact same thing with their long-term plans. So as you go out and build this bulletproof financial plan based on everything we've talked about today, ask yourself this. How do you build a financial plan for your future self, knowing that the person you will become might have entirely different desires, entirely different values, and completely different goals than the person you are today?
You are quite literally saving for a stranger. That is a powerful thought